This is recommended language for employees of Oxfam. So for people who are not employees of Oxfam to be outraged at the fact that if they don't know your gender, somebody at Oxfam might refer to you as a parent. Frankly, it shouldn't be a story anyway, because if you don't like it, don't work for Oxfam, right? Hello, lovely people. My name is Emma. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. I apologise if my voice sounds a little bit off. I've had some kind of thing, some sort of coldy, throaty thing. I've still got bad earache, so bear with me. But just before I got super sick, I made a little short film. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who went and watched that. It's called Beside Myself. It features me and Puppet Emma, and it's just a goofy little bit of fun. I've been really heartwarmed and amazed by the responses. It's been super sweet. I made that as part of Joel Haver's Oscars short film competition. I shot it in 3 hours, and it was crazy, but it was a lot of fun. And the next day I got really ill. So I was lucky to have that content, and I'm really grateful to you guys supporting it. So if you haven't seen it and you want just a 10-minute break from the stresses of life, go check it out. I'm also going to be away from my desktop and all of the things for 5 whole days next week. I'm doing a little short course, and because it's 5 full working days, I'm going to go and stay in a cheap hotel by myself for 4 nights, so that's going to be really fun. So streams and videos and things will slow down for the end of the month, which is why I'm really super extra grateful to today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. A, because having a good sponsor that actually cares about creators means that I can get sick or go away for a few days and not stress out, but also because Raid gives me something to do in the hotel room on my own. Thank goodness for hotel Wi-Fi and Raid Shadow Legends. It's Raid's 4th anniversary, 4 years. I know, it feels like a lifetime. You know those imaginary dinner party scenarios where you pick people from history or, you know, figures, political figures that you'd like to invite to dinner? Let's do that real quick, but with Raid champions. Number 1, Athel. Obviously. I've already told you about her. She's gonna have some great war stories for the dinner table. We'd get on like a house on fire, okay? Raglan? Okay, here's my thinking. She is the best reviver in Raid, hands down. So I'm thinking if we have a little too much wine, Raglan is there to save the day. I want to say Venus for number 3. I'm gonna say Venus. Gorgeous. She looks like she's just stepped out of a ball and is like ready for this luxurious dinner party. She's going to add a touch of glamour, although her main thing is poison, which at dinner party is okay. I do have concerns. Gala long braids. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that I left a dwarf until the 4th position. If you know me and RPGs, dwarves are my heart. Gala as a champion is like pure damage. So again, if we're talking war stories for round the dinner table, what do you think? Would you come to my dinner party? You can't, you're not invited. There's a whole bunch of stuff going down for Raid's 4th anniversary. I'm talking promo codes, events, dedicated offers, free gifts. There's a brand new fusion event where you can get an anniversary themed legendary champion. You can also take this cute trip down memory lane with a recap video of all your stats in Raid. By the way, if you're an Amazon Prime member, and you just got Gembo, there will be another drop soon with some very powerful Savage gear. As always with Raid, there are some fabulous new bonuses for you. There's a special birthday package for new players. Do check out my link down below or follow the QR code. As always, you get some insane bonuses, including Epic Champion Kellan the Shrike. You get your energy refills, your mana potions, your XP brews, plus there are a bunch of free birthday gifts for new and existing players. Once you're in game, after following the links, enter the promo code 4YearsRaid. You can get your hands on 4 legendary skill tomes, plus some other useful stuff. Join the Little Duck Gang. I realised that I shared my name last time, but we didn't really have a way to play together, so I've made a clan. You can come join it, the details are on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you once again to Raid for sponsoring this video. Do check out my link down below or use the QR code. Join the Little Duck Gang. I will see you on the battlefield. Yes, I did just realise that I don't need headphones today and put in some earrings. To you, it's like no time has passed. I'm in a silly mood today. So, we're going to talk about, fortunately, something very silly. People are tearing their hair out while clutching their pearls and screaming, "Everyone is so sensitive nowadays, except for me, but I'm being erased." Let me backpedal for a second. Let's talk about Oxfam. Oxfam is a poverty-focused international charity. It's one that I really like. I've supported it quite a lot. Their regular work includes providing fresh water, farming opportunities to poverty-stricken places, trying to tackle world hunger in those sort of ways. They also provide a lot of emergency relief, disaster relief. I hate that their work is necessary, that poverty is a global crisis that is left to charity to try and solve, but at least there are so many volunteers and donors and people willing to dedicate their time and their lives to trying to end those problems and trying to help people. They are a very good charity. Now, I think, and call me naive, call me overly optimistic if you like, I think you would be hard pushed to find many just average people who don't think that no one deserves to live in poverty. That was a lot of negatives that made that a bit confusing in a row. What I mean to say is that surely there is nothing cultural or political that would cause someone to look down on a charity like this and cause a big old stink. It would have to be something really heinous, right? It turns out Oxfam have gone absolutely mental by reminding everyone that their support is for all people, even minority groups. Here's what happened. It's amazing to me that people are spending their time getting angry about this. I feel like a lot of people have just been tricked into spending half of their day every day angry sharing clickbait articles about shit that doesn't matter. I genuinely think that's what causes this kind of outrage. So I want to, if anybody has just seen a headline and gotten angry, I want to kind of go through what is actually going on. So what happened is Oxfam released an inclusive language guide for its employees, which is quite a normal thing if you've ever worked in any kind of big corporation. When I've worked at fast food and stuff like that, there's always a lot of introductory videos and guidebooks and things on how to talk to people, because you don't want to offend if you're working in a charity shop, you don't want to offend an old lady by saying something racist. It just kind of makes sense, right? It's partly to protect themselves and their image and to kind of spread a bit of awareness about I'm having a mind blank. The things what they believe in. So they released this inclusive language guide, and apparently, we're going to read it today. We're going to read it through together. I've had a little glance through, I've read the first sort of 3 or 4 pages, and it all seemed quite nice to me, but we're going to go through it together to see what people are angry about. But apparently, it suggested avoiding gendered terms for things like mother and father. So obviously, you know exactly who's angry about this. Transphobes. They've seen this as a fantastic opportunity to be transphobic under the guise of women's rights, which is what happens all the time. And let me just throw this out there, if it's not already super clear from my channel. As a cis woman, I want to tell you that I am not being erased by trans women. I'm not being erased by the word people, because I am a people. And then Oxfam, I like that they have said, no, this is what we believe, this is what we stand for, we're standing by that. And they shared like I'll find it in a bit, but they shared just like a rainbow flag or something to be like, our policies are meant to be inclusive. Nobody deserves to live in poverty. So let's take a little peek at this language guide. So it's available for download if you wanted to read it yourself. We're just going to skim through, obviously, but it's available to download on their website. The Inclusive Language Guide is a resource to support people in our sector who have to communicate in English to think about how the way they write can subvert or inadvertently reinforce intersecting forms of inequality that we work to end. Equality isn't equality if it isn't for everyone. It really is as simple as that. I don't care if you politically have concerns about gender recognition bills, or, you know, if you have some, you know, trans people are fine, but I'm worried about the children, or I'm worried about this, that, and the other. You surely agree that nobody deserves to live in poverty. Whatever somebody's race, religion, gender, sexuality, nobody should live in poverty, die in poverty when it can be prevented. That is the basis of all of this. And so the point of inclusive language, if you're not being inclusive, if you're not seen as inclusive, you are going to dissuade people who need your help. And you are going to dissuade people from supporting you. So this is their inclusive language guide. Choices in language can empower us to reframe issues, rewrite tired stories, challenge problematic ideas, and build a radically better future based on a survivor-centered, intersectional, anti-racist, and feminist vision of equality. Now, if you are anti-woke or anything like that, or you just feel like there's so many words for everything now, and you feel like a bit out of touch, and I don't know what the kids are going on about when they say all these things. The very basic of this is what I just said. We believe in an equal right to survive for everybody, no matter their race, gender, etc. Okay, there's a trigger warning, which is probably worth mentioning. I'm not going to read anything disturbing on YouTube, but if you're going to check it out yourself, this language guide includes things not to say. I've encountered this issue when I've been trying to like blacklist words to moderate on Discord and Twitch and stuff like that, because you have to read horrible words so that you can blacklist them, and that it can be, you think it's going to be fine, it can be surprisingly draining, so just be careful if you do decide to check this out. I think this was really good. This is one of my favourite early things to include. They've written this note on discomfort. As you read this guide, you may experience discomfort. For example, many people don't personally associate with the concept of having privilege. I think this is so true and so important, and so much of the reactive attitude towards privilege that I have personally seen and encountered and felt myself in many ways, because this discomfort is normal, has been from people who have certain privilege. Say, I'm a white woman, I'm in many respects quite a protected class, but I may be disadvantaged in other areas. So one area that I see this happen particularly often is people who are economically disadvantaged. If you are brought up with money, if you go to private school and you have your education paid for, and then your parents fund a company, you know, financial privilege is a real thing, and a lot of people struggle very much with identifying with privilege when they have been extremely disadvantaged, say economically. That is the main one that I've probably seen. So a lot of, so I've seen this with men when you're talking about male privilege. I've seen this with white men and women when you're talking about white privilege. You have this instinctive reaction, which is like, but I overcame my own struggles. Like, I had a lot of disadvantage and I worked really hard to get where I am. And that's completely true and fair. And in a way, that's the first step towards understanding privilege, is because you were disadvantaged in a certain way. You can see how some people were born with a particular privilege. Now comes intersectionality, and why that's kind of important. You have to kind of deconstruct, okay, well, what? I've never, ever been subject to any kind of racist discrimination. So that is a privilege that, you know, whatever percentage of people who go into higher education or the workforce or whatever are, you know, biased towards my race or my gender or whatever. So, okay, that is a privilege. It's kind of like just thinking about, okay, I don't feel like I have this privilege. You know, I worked really hard. But what if there was somebody who was in my exact position, but they were a black trans woman who was disabled? They would have fewer advantages than you. It's a really complicated thing to try and boil down into like a 2-minute conversation, so I apologise for not wording it particularly well. I do think it's really good that they included this discomfort, because I think facing that discomfort is what puts so many people off thinking about privilege and the privilege that you might have. I can't cover it briefly here. Oxfam couldn't cover it briefly in a couple of paragraphs in that much depth, but just mentioning it and introducing it to the conversation and saying, look, you might feel uncomfortable, trying your best not to be put off by that, and, you know, stick with it, try and keep reading and learning. I just thought that was really good. And the way I've tried to talk about it has been a word salad of nothing, so I apologise. Feminist principles for language use. So here is just some principles that Oxfam sort of stands for. Diversity. We won't make sweeping statements which categorise people according to characteristics defined by others. We will be led by how the people in question prefer to be referred to. Safety. We will ensure that our language does not put people at risk or cause harm. Disability, physical and mental health. Oxfam's work to support people living in poverty must integrate an informed understanding of the way that people with disabilities or other physical or mental health issues are disproportionately affected by inequality. Again, it's a charity focused on solving inequalities. That just makes perfect sense. There's a description of ableism here and some terms to use, talking about people with a mobility impairment, things like that, language that is sort of neutral and inclusive. I think you'd be hard-pushed to find anyone who disagrees. Next, however, we have gender justice, sexual diversity, and women's rights. Oxfam's commitment to gender justice is at the heart of our work to overcome inequality. Gender justice is understood as full equality between women and men, including trans men and women, as well as non-binary people. If anybody watching is just sick and tired of hearing about gender and inequality and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't need to be said. It can feel like that. Often it feels like that because we live in a very privileged society, for example. It matters to Oxfam and Oxfam employees because there is gender inequality in plenty of different ways, in plenty of different places, that affects the kind of work that they do. I gotta take a selfie real quick because I'm gonna be late to my stream. This is an interesting one that I have never really thought about before. They're encouraging using the term forced marriage rather than things like early marriage or child marriage, as it is never legitimate for a child to marry. Avoiding mankind to say humankind or human beings. Yeah, some people probably think that's a bit much. I kind of think that one is a bit much, but this is an all-inclusive company guideline, right? And the fact is that if somebody might be offended by mankind, you're better off just not saying it. It's about being inclusive to as many as possible. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying mankind, but if I was a big corporation, this kind of makes sense to me. Using the term partner or spouse, which is something that I do a lot. A lot of people were I think the first time I sort of mentioned my partner, Matt, on YouTube, and I refer to him as my boyfriend as well, but I think the first time I mentioned him, I referred to him as my partner, and a lot of men were really cross that I called him my partner instead of my boyfriend, even though I use both sort of interchangeably, which I think is strange and fascinating. Again, it just makes sense to use neutral terms as often as possible because then you can't be wrong. Like, this is interesting too. Women, men, girls, boys, talking about avoiding saying women and children. Well, it says, reaffirming the patriarchal view that women are as helpless as children, neglecting women's actual and potential roles. It wrongly suggests that men are not in need of protection and that women have no agency. Using phrases that do not categorize women and children in the same group, be specific about what you're talking about. I think that's kind of right. I think the whole women and children thing harkens back to like a sort of imagined America in the 50s, you know, where women and children are both a sort of like soft, delicate, protected class, whereas adult women and adult men have the same right to protection. I think that's cool. I think that's interesting. LGBTQIA plus rights and inclusion, and they've actually included ace people. Hooray! Assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. This is something that I wish more people would use. I see the terms biologically female and biologically male used a lot. And not only is that just more awkward to say, but it implies a lot of things. It's complicated. It tends to be used in a transphobic way. It's much simpler to use AFAB and AMAB, in my opinion. Biphobia. Bless you, Oxfam, for including biphobia. I've been debating talking about biphobia on and off for a while because, my God, do you experience it online so much, so often, especially on YouTube. Oh, it's infuriating. Here's the part some right-wing clickbait site chose to make a stink out of, I assume, that got this shared into a big disaster. Honestly, I'm surprised that people weren't picking apart like the non-binary part or the pronoun part or something. No, it's the parenthood part. Because women are being erased, mothers and fathers are being erased. So this is suggesting, remember this is a guide for stuff. So it's not like this isn't Oxfam's rules for everyone in society. This is a guide for their stuff. And frankly, it shouldn't be a story anyway, because if you don't like it, don't fucking work for Oxfam, right? It's really very silly. So they suggest to use the term parent if you're unsure. It even says, if unsure, it's more inclusive to use parent. And that's basically their way of saying, don't assume, well, they do specifically say, don't assume gender roles. And look, the GC, that's the gender critical crowd love to talk about misgendering, and misgendering isn't really a thing and whatever. And I am a cis woman with short hair, and I can tell you, I mean, watch some of my comments videos, but in real life too, just from being like, you can't see me clearly at the back of the queue, I've been called sir, and then, oh, madam, oh, and it's like, if we use gender neutral terms, that wouldn't happen. It happens to cis people too, okay? So it's just more inclusive to use neutral language. And if you know what somebody's preferred description is, if you know if somebody introduces themselves as the mother, the father, oh, my pronouns are she, her, and this Oxfam guide says this as well, then you can indeed refer to them the way they'd be preferred to refer to. So you can say mother, father, woman, man, whatever. It's just saying, if you don't know, or if you're not totally sure, use neutral language. It just saves people a bit of embarrassment. I chopped off all my hair very young, and I didn't really ever wear makeup when I was younger. Misgendering was happening to me and to people I knew way before the trans panic of recent history, right? It's not a thing caused by trans rights activism. I just want to make that really clear. This is just basic politeness. I've done a video about this already, so most of you have probably seen. It was in response to Classically Abby discussing the whole they-them thing. The they-them pronouns stink, it was discussing. People have suddenly adopted this idea that gender-neutral language is a new thing, and it's erasing women, and it's erasing mothers and fathers now, and it's all because of this trans agenda, and it's not. It's always been a thing. They-them specifically has been used since like the 1300s to refer to people when you don't know their gender. It was taught in school, when I was in school. Oh, somebody's lost their purse. You don't know who they are, you don't know their gender, so you use a neutral pronoun. It's just the politest way to behave when you're not sure what somebody might identify as. And then it mentions pronouns, and it just says, don't assume and say he or she in the same way that I have been accidentally called sir. It's just about politeness. It's just saving people embarrassment and in turn being nicer. It's just about being nicer. So that is what this whole stink has been about. This guide saying, if you don't know how someone wants to be referred to, use neutral language. Which, again, is what we have been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years. It doesn't have anything to do with trans people. There's a couple of similar kind of columns here, so they talk about using they, them as well, in a similar kind of way. There's a nice page on trans inclusivity, which obviously is going to upset transphobes, but again, poverty can affect anyone, and trans people deserve to be supported in that situation as well. I don't really care what your politics are. If you think that a charity shouldn't be inclusive of everyone, then you're a bad person. It's as simple as that. You're a bad person. Ooh, I like this one. So the next section is sexual and reproductive health rights. I like this one. Anti-abortion or anti-choice. I've been trying to train myself to say this for a long time. I don't like pro-life. Pro-life is, as Oxfam says, emotive and misleading. Anti-abortion is accurate and avoids any kind of connotations. A lot of the pro-life movement is anti-life when you're talking about pregnant people, etc. So I much prefer anti-abortion or anti-choice. Pro-choice, anti-choice. I like that a lot. Anti-abortion, I would say, is the more practical, the most sort of objective terminology. I do like anti-choice. And now this, again, very upsetting to the transphobes. Breastfeeding people who breastfeed. Once again, I would like to stress, as a cis woman, I am not erased when a charity refers to women as people. Okay? So that includes women who breastfeed, because women are people. We're not being erased by inclusive language. That notion is balmy. It also doesn't erase women, because, once again, if you know how somebody identifies and prefers to be referred to, you can still use gendered terms. Because I've said about 5,000 times in this, I'm a woman. If I was to become a mother, people would call me a mother, and I would say I'm a mother, and that would be fine. And there would be, gendered language would still exist to describe me. But if somebody called me a parent, that would also be true. Neither of those words changes anything about me and my gender and my role, or the existence of women. You see what I'm saying? There's a section here about sexual violence, which I'm going to skip through just because it's not really pertinent to what we're talking about today. You can go and read it. I think this guideline is quite good. So if you're interested, you can go and read it, but there's no sense in upsetting ourselves reading something that isn't pertinent to what we're talking about. Then there's a section on migration and refugee rights, hugely important to the work that Oxfam does. Asylum seeker rather than illegal immigrant is a hugely important one that I really agree with. Migration as a complex phenomenon rather than a challenge, crisis, or problem. I think that's really important too, because it's very easy, and this happens a lot whenever any kind of crisis occurs, whether it's financial, whether that's nationally or globally, whenever there's some kind of difficulty, migration and migrants tend to bear the brunt of a lot of the blame, I guess. It only takes it takes a very brief look at least based in the UK, it takes a very brief look at our sort of migration history and the just general demographics of our country to understand that migration is hugely important to our economy, our society. So not referring to migration as like a crisis is a good idea, I think. Race, power, and decolonisation, allyship, anti-racism. There's a lot of guides here into, this is mostly for written language, I think, this guide, how to refer to different people of colour. I would say that, again, living in the UK, it's mostly why there are lots of different roles in Oxfam, but I always think about Oxfam charity shops and how it tends to be, and I don't mean this in a negative way, it tends to be retirees and people like that who work there who just might not be up on the latest offensive language. I think it's sensible to have a guide that's like, this language that you might have heard was normal years ago is actually a little bit offensive. Here's something polite and sort of neutral that you can say to not worry about that. I think it's a good idea. Like, a lot of this will sound sort of basic to a lot of people, I guess, but it's meant to be encompassing and inclusive. I think the important thing is that it's presented in a way that it does explain everything in detail. It doesn't assume you already know all this, and if you don't already know this, if you don't already agree with this, then you're a terrible person. It's more like, you might just not be aware of this issue, and why would you if you're like, so much of the UK is like, little villages of elderly white people. Like, you just might not have heard much about racial inequality and what language to use. So it's not accusatory, it's not, there's no like us versus them here, it's just, the word I'm looking for, it's just explanatory. It's just clear, explanatory. This is the sort of ideal thing to say because then you won't offend people. And that's it. I think they've done this in a really good way. And that's it. Then we have a whole lot of references and some recommended further reading, which I think is all really good. This is all very carefully put together and researched. I mean, when you work in any corporation, here's a thing to remember. You don't have to agree with every company policy. You might think something's a little bit much or a little bit silly, but you agree to those terms to work there because that's how we live in a society, right? You just agree to certain social terms, and this is recommended language for employees of Oxfam, right? So for people who are not employees of Oxfam to be outraged at the fact that if they don't know your gender, somebody at Oxfam might refer to you as a parent. What a thing to get angry about. Talk about clutching pearls. It's so just nothing, and yet it's become this huge... It's just because transphobia and this trans panic is a big, clickable, hot topic right now. Anything deemed too woke, the kind of people that run clickbaity hate sites full of adverts, by the way, that's why they want you to click on it and share it, because they make money from it. This is the perfect fodder to, bam, yeah, get this out, share it everywhere, make everyone angry. People are more angry at each other, which means they're more likely to read more of our articles and yeah, agree and then share that and clickety click, 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 add money, add money, add money. Something I realised a while ago, this is mostly regarding Twitter, the cesspool of the internet that I am still regretfully a part of, is that I fall into this trap quite often. And I had sort of a realisation a while ago, and I was kind of looking at a lot of the content that makes or made me sort of angry online, and I started to think, how much of this is real in that it, is a perspective that might take hold, is something that might really affect people, or is important, is going to have an impact, and how much of it is just make you angry, get click. How much am I contributing to that by getting angry and clicking? So I've tried to stop doing that. Often I will scroll through and I will see people sharing things on social media like Twitter, and I will look at it and be like, that's not real. Everybody's getting angry at something that is really not, definitely not real, not a real thing. Or completely inconsequential. Like this, it's a corporate language guide. That's not a thing to get annoyed about. It's just about, hey, employees, we've put together this thing. This is what we stand for, and this is what you can say to prevent offending people while we do our important work. Which, you know, if we're talking about Oxfam, stuff like supporting the Ukraine with humanitarian aid, it's kind of a bigger deal right now, and maybe something we should be talking about more. My only kind of hope with this, maybe by making everyone talk about Oxfam, and I hope this doesn't go the other way and people start like blacklisting Oxfam because of this language issue or whatever. I hope it draws more attention to Oxfam and therefore more support. That's all I can hope. But otherwise, it's like, I think this is a good idea, right? Actually going to the source, saying, what actually is the thing that people are angry about, and reading that properly, instead of going to clickbait article 1, 2, 3, giving them what they want, sharing those, and just spreading this cycle of just anger at nothing. Just pointless, nothing anger. It doesn't matter to us. It's not like policy, you know, politically that affects people's lives. It's just bullshit that is genuinely only to get money and make people cross. So I think that's something that I'm really trying to, because it's hard not to get drawn in by. That's why it's good. That's why clickbaity content works, because it draws you in. It's really, I'm not trying to be like high and mighty, like I don't fall for that anymore, because I do. Windows noise. I need to plug in my my backup drive. Sorry. It's easy to fall for, and I think that as many of us as possible should do our very best not to get sucked into that. To stop feeding the bullshit is to stop clicking on hateful clickbait and sharing it. And so that's what I'm going to try and do from now on. So there you go. That was Oxfam's inclusive language guide. I think this language guide is fine. I think a lot of the resources they've used are really good. I would like to point out that one of their resources is called Word Slut, which is an amazing title. Do let me know your thoughts down below. Do give the video a cheeky like if you enjoyed it. I've got a lot of fun videos planned and coming up, so stay tuned. Do subscribe if you haven't already, and then you won't miss all the fun. As always, I'd like to give a big old thank you and a shout out to my giant chickens and colossal quackers over on Patreon. We're having so much fun on the Patreon. There's a lot of cool perks. That is probably the best way to support this channel. If you do like what I do, please consider checking it out. The link is in the description. Most importantly, have yourselves a very lovely week, and I will see you really soon.